Hi, my beautiful students. Today I am in one of the Krasnodar region museums, and I want to tell you a little bit about history of this region. Today's video I am devoted to Cossacks. Who they are? The term Cossacks, Kazaki or Kazaki, was adopted in Russian to designate an independent armed population in various uninhabited territories. Cossacks are a separate ethnic group, an independent nationality, a special nation of mixed Turkic-Slavic descent. Their goal was to protect the borders of the Russian Empire from foreigners. Well, and in return they receive land. A Cossack could have been of any religion, but the house which I am going to show you right now tells us that its owner was Orthodox. This tells us the presence of the red corner in the house. Well, actually, why is the red corner? Because red also means beautiful. Red, красный, красивый. In a Russian house, the red corner was always arranged in the most prominent and honorable place in the house, diagonally from the front door in the far corner of the room. So the icons were the first things that visitors could see. Coming into the room, the Christian primarily baptized himself before the icons and bowed to God, and only then would she greet the hosts. The red corner had always been the most important and revered place in a house. It was observed with a special purity. The icons were decorated with precious casings, vestments, and flowers, and the owners burned icon lamp, standing or pendant. If there was a celebratory meal, the most honorable guest was placed closest to the red corner. Cossacks brought the first sheaf of hay from the harvest, and then it could lay in the house for a year. It was believed that sheer sufficiency would be always in the house thanks to this sheaf. So, such an interesting fact. The chest. The chest was the most important article of any house. It could be used as a bed, wardrobe, and chair. Every family member had her own chest. Before the revolution, people kept a mirror at the bottom of the chest. Why? Because it was believed that evil entities and spirits could emerge from it, and it needed to be kept away. Well, such honor story. Here you can see a wooden bench and, of course, table. Tables had two forms, rectangular and round table. Well, and round tables were more popular. Well, in the past, families were big. All family members got together, parents, grandparents, children, cousins. And in the center of the table was a large dish. Usually it was пельмени or вареники. And everybody ate from the one large plate. In cast iron bowls, people cooked porridge. They pulled the dish out using this, called ухват, tongs, and poured it into the clay pots. Here you can see the predecessor of the modern iron. Of course, I am joking, but nonetheless, this what iron looked like. The wet fabric was wound around a rolling pin and rolled with the chop until the fabric was ironed. It was a very labor-intensive process. Now I would like to pay attention to the spinning wheel. From the age of 6, girls were obliged to work with the spinning wheel. They wove fabric, threads from flax, hemp, and wool. They wove thin fabric and created samples. All these samples folded into a chest, and then they could become the material from wedding dress. Here we can see Kuban embroidery. Well, Kuban embroidery and Ukrainian embroidery are similar. The two colors are primary, black and red. But in contrast to the Ukrainian, Kuban embroidery patterns were more floral, three-dimensional, and more round. Ukrainian embroidery patterns had more geometric shapes, triangles, and so on. Let's look at the wicker rugs, which were popular all over Russia. But in the Kuban, they were more colorful and bright. As you can see, here there are different colors: blue, green, brown, red, and so on. In the central part of Russia, the colors were more darker. Here we see a wicker fence on which clay pots, and this is the way the pots were dried. Cossacks cultivated geese, cows, pigs, and of course chickens. And I know a very interesting fact which I want to share with you. Well, the European chickens were especially appreciated. Do you know why? Not because those chickens had an amazing meat, tasty meat, no. Because the fact that inside of them chickens, smugglers hid steel needles, which every mistress wanted to get. Roofs. The roofs were covered with planks and saman. Saman, this is a building material from earth, made from earth and sometimes from organic materials. The top of the roof was covered with dry reeds and processed in such a way that it was cold in the summer and hot in the winter. Only fire posed thread, because everything could burn very quickly. Here you can see the first settlers from the Crimea, the Middle Strip. Well, a lot of runaway peasants fled here, so our land was populated in much the same way as America. People from all corners fled here, and they were given a plot of land and money. But they had to protect the borders. Cossacks defended our land from the mountain people who didn't want to divide their land with settlers. Let's move on to the next stand. Here you can see harness, stirrup. You know, the horse was the fighting friend of Cossack. And even if the Cossack couldn't afford something for himself, the horse still got the best of everything. The horses were decorated with silver stirrups and harness. Well, Cossacks were generous, particularly in terms of equipment for horses. There are a lot of stories how horses saved their owners from certain death. And of course, Cossacks were affectionate and sensitive towards their favorite animal. No less valuable for the Cossacks were the weapons. Here you can see the saber and shashka. To be honest, I cannot how translate it in English. Shashka is shashka. Well, I just can tell you where the differences. The saber has a hilt. This is such a handle. The shashka has a center of gravity closer to the handle, so it's easy to lift it with one hand and cut enemies in all directions. During the First World War, Cossacks were called devils on horseback because their terrible reception. They could hack a man in half. Here is another knife. It's called Казачий Спас. It has Circassian origin. It was often decorated with silver, gold, damask patterns. Well, and now finally I would like to tell you about clothes. The Kazakh clothes were borrowed from the mountain people, namely Circassian. This is the formal dress. The length of coat, Kazakh's coat, was shorter than Circassians. The color could be red, green, black, blue, it doesn't matter, but the shirt was necessarily red due to the fact that the red is the color of blood, and the Kazakh had to die standing, and enemy shouldn't see his death, his defeat. Above was the hood, bashlik. It provided protection from the wind and the sun, and it was possible to understand from it what the Kazakh was doing. If the edges of a hood dangled, Kazakh was rested. If they were tied or knotted, the Kazakh was in the combat service and nobody should distract him. This is burqa, Caucasian dress. Well, this piece of clothing had played two roles. Firstly, it was used as a bed because Cossacks slept outside, very often somewhere in the fields. Well, and secondly, it's a very important fact. It was a real armored vest. At a distance 100 meters, it was impossible to shoot it through with the gun. But the burqa had just one problem. It was difficult to wash it. Well, so the burqa was put into the river and where the strong water current washed it, and then it dried standing. And the last fact for today, look at the boots. They were wrapped with fat because the fat allowed the boots to keep their strength. Well, my beautiful students, thank you so much that you are watching my videos. I hope this video is interesting for you, and if you have questions, ask me, and of course subscribe to my channel, Learn Russian with Naya, and discover Russian together with me. Enjoy life, enjoy Russian with Naya. See you, bye.